This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jespersen.
All right, well, news happens fast, especially it seems if you live in, work out of, or pay attention to the province of Alberta. Welcome to this episode, everybody. Jespersen here with Hicks. In just a second, Tasha Kheiridden. 1 day ago, most folks are talking about an incident that unfolds at an Alberta Next town hall down in Calgary. A high school student has his mic cut. You know the drill. If you caught our most recent episode, you know the drill well. Chances are you sent us an email. Our inbox absolutely flooded. The comments on our Instagram post in particular taking off on this, and we'll spend some time on this, but the news cycle pivots fast, and it pivots hard as Alberta's Premier just a few short hours ago announces that Alberta will take on the role of a formal proponent for a new crude oil pipeline to BC's coast, to the west coast of Canada. It's an ambitious project that the province has, quite frankly, wanted for quite some time, and the province hopes to announce the next time that the Prime Minister unveils the next wave of these so-called nation-building projects. So Alberta's committing millions of dollars to the early planning and engineering, Indigenous engagement, which is going to be key. I'm sure that Northern Gateway will come up in our conversation with Tasha and in our live chat today, powered by Park Power. So Alberta insists that it's not going to build the pipeline itself, that it doesn't want to own the pipeline. Alberta doesn't want to be in a scenario, says the Premier, like the federal government was with TMX, where it affords the opportunity for a pipeline to expand in that case, but winds up with the asset on its hands trying to find a buyer. But the Premier of Alberta does say that she believes Alberta's support will help unlock private sector investment. So the project envisions carrying up to about 1 million barrels a day to BC's northwest coast. Details like the exact route, the cost, the builder remain unsettled, and unconvinced is the Premier of British Columbia, several First Nations along the west coast, and other critics across Canada, including the Premier of Quebec. So how realistic is this to happen? How excited should folks in the energy industry be? How concerned should environmentalists be? And what does the average Canadian need to know about how realistic this pitch actually is? What do you think?
Well, I'm wondering, is this the Grey Cup announcement? And when I saw it, I was like, is she jumping the gun on the official announcement together to make it look like her government pushed the Liberal federal government to do this? Because I'm like, weren't they supposed to announce this together?
Yeah,
Grey Cup?
And of course, to get that done, she's going to want to have public opinion. They're going to want to solicit her in some circumstance, and this is unlikely before Grey Cup. We're talking like what, less than 8 weeks, there. Right? I mean, yeah. Grey Cup's almost there, but the Premier does want to put pressure on Ottawa. Nothing new there. Before we bring in Tasha, why don't we got a 30-second clip of the Premier appearing on CPAC. So here's Danielle Smith shortly after making the announcement, and like Johnny just alluded to, here she is putting the ball over into Ottawa's court.
You're now going to act as the proponent of this new pipeline to the West Coast. There are 3 companies involved as an advisory role, to my understanding. Does this not just reinforce what Premier Eby has always said, that there's no real private interest in a new pipeline?
I would say that we have a market right now where it's difficult to attract private equity because of some of the bad laws that have been in place over the last 10 years. This is why I've talked to the Prime Minister about needing a grand bargain where we get a bitumen pipeline, the Pathways project to reduce emissions, but then also address the 9 bad laws. The way pipelines get built is that they get proponents willing to pledge barrels. Well, if you've got an emissions cap and a tanker ban at the moment, there aren't any proponents that are willing to pledge those barrels, which is part of the reason why it's difficult to get a pipeline built. It's a chicken and egg problem, and we're hoping to be able to cut through that so we can get this on the major projects list so we can attract private capital.
So we can attract private capital. Michael's watching us live on YouTube this morning. He's in our chat powered by Park Power. Says, I think that the Premier deliberately presented this pipeline project knowing it's going to fail. Then she can say, that Ottawa's against Alberta. I want to find out what Tasha has to say. Why, you think that that's the case?
Right before we go to Tasha, I'll just say, if you scroll the comments on this official post on Instagram and everywhere they posted it, every comment is like, great, but the Liberals will squash it. So that's what I meant. Like, it's almost like she jumped the gun, and now, again, people are criticizing the federal government when maybe behind closed doors, this was what they were going to announce at Grey Cup. It kind of doesn't make sense to me, but again, it's a Smith play for sure, if that is the case that she jumped the gun.
Well, let's see. So the Prime Minister, it sounds like, has a chance to pleasantly surprise Albertans, but not without political risk.
Now you're getting what you want. What are Albertans going to say when, carbon tax is gone, pipelines coming, like... You can't criticize.
Yeah, but there will be vociferous opposition to this
for
pipeline.
Sure. First
Some
Nations,
opinions have not changed in years. Northern Gateway got caught up in the courts. Let's go to the expert on this. Tasha Kheiridden is easily one of Canada's most recognizable voices in politics and public policy. You've seen her in Canada's national papers. You've seen her on all the major networks. She's the author of The Right Path, a book exploring the future of conservatism in Canada, and she also publishes the popular Substack, In My Opinion. Welcome back to the show. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too, Ryan.
Yeah, so the theory from some, like Michael in our live chat, is that the Premier's doing this knowing it'll fail so she can blame Ottawa, and then you have some that are bullish. Calgary could use good news right now after those Imperial Oil layoffs that are thinking, hey, maybe things will be different this time around. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a combination of all these. I think this announcement definitely cheered is supposed to cheer people who are very upset about those layoffs, and also maybe distract from some of the issues that Danielle Smith is facing politically right now. Is no secret to anyone listening here. Labor strife. You mentioned earlier the incident with McAllister and that kid who got shut down. I mean, it just goes on and on. But I think the biggest issues here is, yes, it's a power play with Ottawa. And there are a lot of hurdles. Apart from just private partners in this, there's also the issue of the tanker ban, because if this oil gets to Tidewater, the biggest issue is really getting it off the coast, getting it shipped. And right now, tankers can only be 2/3 full as it is because the Narrows Bridge is too low. They have to dredge further to get bigger tankers in to get the oil that's right now flowing out there out in larger capacity. So until those issues get resolved, excuse me, greenlighting a pipeline without any way to get the oil off onto a boat and get it out is a problem. And that's going to face opposition in other parts of the country. This is the piece that Smith might be thinking of, or maybe not, but Carney's going to have to face it because Quebec does not like pipelines. It doesn't like tankers. Look what happened there. They had this huge issue with beluga whales that they protected years ago. They were supposed to expand shipping capacity in the St. Lawrence. They refused because it was going to hurt whales. Quebec voters are Liberal voters. So Carney's going to have to square the circle. For him, it's a really big problem because you got, separatist forces in Quebec and Alberta, too, at the same time barking and threatening to take action in 2026, referenda, elections. There's so much to unpack here, Ryan, but she's made a power play, and I think it was very smart politically for her to do this.
Okay, so take us into why you think smart politically oftentimes, most times, hinges on the timing, what the political temperature looks like, what the political climate looks like. What gives you reason to believe that this is the time to announce Alberta's intention?
Well, because let's face it, there's ongoing issues with Ottawa that Alberta's always legitimately had. There's issues with Trudeau government that got completely out of hand in terms of the emissions cap, in terms of tax, carbon tax, in terms of all those things. So that boiling point is now it's simmering now. It's gone down from boiling to simmer because Carney has taken action on both those, even if it's not permanent on the emissions cap, but still he's taking action. Smith has described the meeting with him as extremely positive. She was all smiles after the last one they had. So thinking that she sees the opening here, she sees the strong hand to play. And so she's playing it now because it puts him, like you said, throws the ball into his court and makes her look really good with voters, with her base, which right now, if you do polling, 2/3 of her base would vote yes in a referendum to separate. Only 1/3 of Albertans would, but 2/3 of the UCP. So she's got a base to please. She's taking a tough stand, and she's taking a stand in favor of the industry and forcing Ottawa to deal with it. So, that I think that's the timing is in Grey Cup aside. Does she want to scoop the prime minister? Does she want to do it before? I think that, she's going to have her stage and with him, and he's going to have to react.
The scoop the prime minister angle is an interesting one, isn't it? Because it like we said, it puts the ball in Ottawa's court. You come across as though, everybody talked. We talked about it with the PM on September 10th about this list of 9 demands. These are like Alberta's top 9 grievances. The premier referenced it again yesterday. She gains political capital if the project is even entertained, doesn't she? I mean, can't Carney even ride the line here where the federal government explores the idea in good faith and ultimately through stakeholder consultations and the like it fails? Does Carney still earn points? Like, what do the feds have to lose here? The premier doesn't have a lot to lose here, it strikes me. The feds do.
Yeah, I mean, this process will take time, I mean, this is it's 2026 just for the pitch, right, to get on the list. They're going to have to put this project together, the feasibility study, which it's not a lot of money, by the way. The 14 million might sound like a lot, but in a feasibility study, it goes pretty quick to do those things. So they're going to put together the approvals, the application for approvals. Approvals take 2 years, right? They used to take 5. The idea is to take 2. So if you look at the horizon, the time horizon for Ottawa, it might push it past the mandate of this government, right, to give a final yes or no on this. But entertaining it is another thing. Saying we're going to entertain it, say it's going to be on the table, that he'd have to make a decision next year. And that's when things sort of hit the fan in both Alberta, potentially with a referendum. We will see in November what happens with the question in the courts. But in Quebec, there's an election in October 2026, and the Separatist Party's ahead there. They're leading, right? They love a fight with Ottawa too, and to say Ottawa's caving into the West and they're going to build pipelines and it's environmentally horrible and look, we gotta get away from these people. The leader of the PQ would love to say that. So it does put Carney in a hard place because his base is he doesn't want to see Quebec fall into Separatist hands either. I mean, Pablo Rodriguez, former Liberal minister, is running as the Liberal candidate, the head of the Liberal Party there. They'd love to have a Liberal government to deal with rather than a PQ government.
Can we talk about the math? It's interesting to see what's happening in Quebec, and polls show similarities, in particular among young voters and the younger population when it comes to separatist sentiments. Do you say fairly flaring up again in Quebec? But you do have it as a storyline in Alberta, although I do feel like it's fading a bit out of the limelight, not to suggest that the movement or the motivation has disappeared, but it's not leading the headlines. Maybe that's because we're out of the summer news cycle as well. But if you do the math and you figure that federally speaking, Yves-François Blanchet, leader of the Bloc, doesn't want it. Quebec's premier doesn't want it. BC's premier doesn't sound like he wants it. That's for sure. If you're taking a look just at where votes are coming from, and a prime minister, federal government ideally should do more than that, but let's be real. There's way more votes and way more Liberal votes in Quebec and BC combined than Alberta. But also, number 2, just where the national sentiment is at. If you're talking about nation-building projects, what sort of a decision does Mark Carney have to make here, and how could you see that playing out?
Well, I think a lot will have to do of how it's, like I said, the transportation issues on this. It's one thing to say we'll greenlight the building of a pipeline, or we'll greenlight the approvals process for this pipeline, and in principle we think it's a good idea. Who knows where the market for oil will be in a couple of years? I mean, this is what Stephen Harper had faced when he was in there, and he wanted to make Canada a petro state. Well, the oil market completely shifted, and so much for that, right? In this case, Carney doesn't know. But greenlighting the approvals process itself implies that you think this is a good idea. So he's going to have to sell that, and he's going to have to sell it in a way to voters if he goes there. Like I said, on the other end is like, what are you going to do to get this oil out? And the tanker ban is a big issue in BC. I mean, you lift the tanker ban. That is going to be insanely unpopular. EB will never agree to that, right? So would Carney unilaterally do this? Like, how could he do this? It would really hurt the Liberals in BC. So I sort of see this a stumbling block with those sorts of things. I think they're going to downplay the issues and really just focus on the idea that, this will be a lot of jobs. We'll deal with those issues maybe later. Try and stomp those down, because that's the flare up. There's those kinds of things when there's intractable issues that you have to address, but in the approvals process for the actual pipeline itself, no, it's once it's built, what do you do? And will people also invest in the oil sands to pump another 1 million barrels of oil? Like that's huge, right? I mean, someone's got to do that. So is there a private partner anywhere? These companies are not committing to be a private partner. They are committing to be on this committee, which is great for Alberta, and it's great, but it shows interest but not commitment.
Yeah.
So it's a lot for Carney to deal with. I don't envy him on this one because it really does politically put him in between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, we're talking to National Post national political columnist Tasha Kheiridden in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Let's talk about the role of private partners. You just alluded to it, a private investment, let me say. In other words, non-government investment. For reference for the audience, you touched on the $14 million that Alberta's committed to exploring the idea of this, to early engineering. The last cost estimate that we have for TMX is $34 billion, which obviously ballooned way past where anybody thought that it was going. But Smith says that, the government will boost this, and I mean, these are my words I'm using, this is my paraphrase, boost it, promote it, champion it, work toward it. The province of Alberta, she says, will not foot the bill for pipeline construction, and I'm not sure that the federal government has an appetite to do it again. So let's talk about private capital, private investment, what the landscape looks like right now, and how realistic you think that is.
Well, with the layoffs just now, it doesn't seem extremely realistic, though a lot of that is due to automation in the industry as well, and the way things are changing and how production is done. So I think, though, that, what the issue will be, the market, right? And there's no question there's a huge market in Asia for heavy crude. There is a huge market. The question is the investment in, can you produce the product in a price that's attractive in that market? And so we don't know in a couple of years what the market will be, what's going to happen with Russia, what's going to happen with generally, the United States too. I mean, geopolitics is shifting so fast, but OPEC is also a factor. I mean, we don't know. And so I think it's taking a gamble that where the market will be. But at the same time, if a pipeline isn't built, then you're going to face a situation where, this resource is in the ground and cannot be used. So, I mean, we would hope that there would be private partners who would, commit to this at some point. But like I said, it depends on so many extraneous factors. Right now, I don't think there is one, or else we'd know, right? I mean, and Danielle Smith would have said, we have X, Y, or Z who've committed to build it, and other people to finance it. But clearly there isn't anyone, or she would have said so.
Well, I wonder if anybody, and when I'm saying anybody, I'm talking about the big oil companies, big investors, the trillions of dollars of capital that move around the globe, is convinced that a pipeline can be built in Canada right now. I'm talking about different eras. I'm talking about different prime ministers. I'm talking about different social climates, so to speak. But Energy East didn't happen. Northern Gateway didn't happen. Different reasons behind the two of them. But I wonder if internationally people look and automatically assume that with a federal Liberal government in Canada, it's not going to happen. You referenced the Imperial Oil cuts in Calgary, the layoffs in Calgary. For people that may not have heard, Imperial Oil says it'll cut its workforce by 20% by the end of 2027. That means hundreds of jobs in Calgary. Imperial says it'll save the company about $150 million annually, but it remains bullish on its production out of Curl and Cold Lake. As a matter of fact, says it believes that it can do more. So there's no lack of optimism in the production side of things, but how does this all come together? I mean, all these different factors, all these different headlines for you.
Well, it is a chicken and egg thing. Is if you build it, will they come? If you don't build it, they won't. If you don't say you're going to build it, no one will. So at some point, I think the government decided that it was gonna do this. And I think, like I said, politically it was very smart. The feasibility is still up in the air. And so for the federal government, it's a political risk for so many reasons. But for Danielle Smith, it is not. It is a winner. If Ottawa says no to this, in principle, she's taken a strong stand politically. She wins. If Ottawa says yes, then the province wins in terms of now this could happen, and it'll be more. Obviously, if the regulatory hurdles are gone, private partners are more interested, right? So, see, at some point you have to start, and so that's why the chicken egg analogy is a pretty good one. They decided to just start the process, and at the end of the day, I think Alberta, Smith will win either way, yes or no. If the pipeline happens, it's a huge win for her, and if it doesn't happen, she stood her ground and picks a fight with Ottawa, and her base will then say, you stood up for us. So she has nothing to lose, really. It's really Ottawa that has more to lose. And as for private investment, well, they'll decide if they lose or not. If they think they'll lose, they won't come in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think that the Premier has literally nothing to lose here.
No.
The debate around whether or not she needs to serve her base or whether or not she needs to serve Albertans is an interesting one. I think that you could also argue, though, that a pipeline like this would bolster Alberta's economy, assuming that there's a market for what it would transport to Tidewater. So, I mean, there's that, right? And also, just realistically speaking, for a segment of Alberta's population, with a teacher strike looming, with controversy on a number of different fronts, controversy that this show wades into on a daily basis, there will always be a segment of the population that has absolutely zero support for what the UCP does no matter what, and it doesn't seem to particularly bother the Premier, nor probably would it with any other politician.
No, probably not. The big thing too is is it actually makes the case for staying in Canada, this whole situation, because, if you're looking at getting the product not just to Tidewater through BC, but also off BC, it makes the point that Alberta needs Canada to make this work, right? So in a way, the signal is sent. If Canada says no in principle, obviously, then that's, that is a negative signal. But if not, it kind of also sends the message. It's a nation building. This is a nation building project in the sense that for Alberta, it also implies you got to stick around and get along with your neighbors and get along with Ottawa and get them to go to battle for you against EB, for example, and make sure this happens, because otherwise it cannot happen. Alberta is a landlocked place. The only place they could look is south.
Yeah.
We know that the Prosperity Project folks were in Washington this week having meetings. They were boasting about that. But again, the key market for Alberta oil has always been the U.S., which is a disadvantage. Diversification means you can get a higher price, and Asia's always been part of the diversification piece. And unless you get more oil to the West, you cannot serve that market. Getting it to the U.S. is not going to help you. So I think, like I said, I think she did the smart thing. I hope that this project does succeed. There's a lot of roadblocks, but it would be absolutely great for Alberta, and it would be great for Canada.
Tasha Kheiridden, our guest in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. I have to ask you in closing your thoughts on what went down at that Alberta Next panel in Calgary. We have more emails about this than anything else, I think, although the teacher strike's about to hit on Monday, on the 6th of October. I assume, I could be wrong, I assume we're going to be getting some emails from parents who are unexpectedly staying at home. But for background, a high school student his mic cut off. He wants to talk about funding for education. He wants to talk about the teachers' strike. Moderator Bruce McAllister, the Premier in the panel, wants to talk about the future of an Alberta police service. His mic is cut, much to the ire of his supporters and the general public online. Generally speaking, how did the story land with you?
As a mother, I looked at that. If it was my kid, I would be jumping through the microphone at McAllister and saying, excuse me?
Yeah.
As someone who believes in free speech, I think it was also absolutely the wrong thing to do. Look, he apologized for it, which he should have done. But bad judgment, and unnecessary. I mean, this is the thing. If you can't answer a kid about the teacher's strike, then, you got a problem there, right? So I think he should have been prepared for that question. He should have expected that someone would throw him a curveball on these issues, because they are live issues for Albertans right now.
100%. I think if it's somebody barking about chemtrails or fluoride in the water or something that is not really on most serious people's radar, cut the mic. If it's somebody 3 days out from a teacher's strike that's a student wondering about their future at post-secondary, you got to take the question. I know you've got a bolt. We always love connecting with you, Tasha. Thanks very much. I want to make sure everybody knows where to find your Substack. We'll put it in the show notes on the podcast and on YouTube. That's Tasha Kheiridden's Substack. In my opinion, you can find it at tashakheiridden.substack.com. Looking forward to the next time our paths cross, Tash.
Thanks so much, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you very much as well. I know that Real Talkers have a lot to say about this. I see Mark Doran in our live chat, powered by Park Power. Mark, he gets to say that he called it. He says, look at this. He says, McAllister, Premier, pivoting to a BS pipeline, just as I predicted right here yesterday. Kathy says she announced it as a distraction so that we quit talking about the disastrous Alberta Next panel down in Calgary. I will say this. I don't think that the premier and her team scrambled quickly to make a big pipeline announcement because of the controversy of the Alberta Next panel in Calgary. To be honest with you, my impression of what the premier, how the premier responded to the Bruce McAllister incident, he's the moderator, leads me to believe that she's not particularly concerned about it, that his apology is sufficient, that she stands by the decision of the moderator, keep the project, or keep the conversation rather, keep the panel on track. I mean, like we discussed yesterday, we don't need to spend too much time on this. Trust me, basically the entire flamethrower coming up on Friday, on October 3rd, on our next episode, which will follow the three leading mayoral candidates in Edmonton joining us in studio, John. So that's going to be interesting. We're going to need to make sure that we get those three high-profile candidates into our green room and out of my spittle range.
Spittle.
You know what I mean? The spittle can fly as I get enthusiastic Real Talkers with your emails, your flamethrower submissions to talk@ryanjespersen.com. But this week is basically almost 100% about that Alberta Next panel. And I apologize, but we're going to read like 1 in 10 emails because so many of you have written in. But I don't think that the premier's losing sleep about that, to be honest with you. I think behind the scenes, there's probably, and I'm not speaking on behalf of Danielle Smith, but I would say, there's probably some snickering about the spanking comment. But like we talked about yesterday, two things happened. Number one, the mic was cut. Bullshit move, right? Number two, he suggested that the Albertan at the microphone should be spanked by his parents, which is a whole separate thing. So I think that his apology, Bruce McAllister's apology, which we discussed on our most recent episode, the 1st of October, was about the spanking. Yeah. That's how I read it. I don't think he's apologizing for cutting the mic. And so I don't think that the pipeline announcement, to be honest with you, has anything to do with that. But it may be a distraction from some other things. Yeah. I mean, if you want to talk about the timing of the pipeline announcement ahead of a teacher's strike, I may be more inclined to put some validity there. But I think that politically speaking, these big projects and these big initiatives are planned obviously years out, but when it comes to a government's sort of communication cycle and what it wants to have in front of the public before MLAs go back to the legislature or before a budget is released or before a leadership review, let alone before an election, these things are planned weeks, months, years out, and I think that this pipeline announcement has been coming for quite some time.
Sure, but I'll be a devil's advocate. I'll be the conspiracy theorist and just say that it also helps calm the crowds that are yelling about these Alberta Next panels, which have got, let's be honest, these have gone horribly, no matter which side of the aisle you're on. Like, I don't know what Danielle and her team and the UCP were thinking, that they were just going to go into town halls and everyone was going to pat them on the back and this was going to be a big raucous meeting of the minds where everyone just agreed and kumbaya and there was big standing ovations. Like this, for me, someone who has met the premier, seen her in here, knows how intelligent she is, knows that she's a great debater, can answer any question off the top of her head, knowledgeable on any subject. It just boggles my mind that they sat in a room and said, this would be a good idea. There's going to be no problems. If I was sitting in a room with someone like a media team, I'd be like, we are not fucking doing this. This is a horrible idea. And speaking of spankings, I definitely agree that in the background, Danielle was the first to give Bruce one vocally. Like this was, she immediately would have said, like you said it yesterday, what if this was a woman, Ryan, that he said this to off the cuff by accident? Because as soon as he said it, there had to be a trigger in his mind that was like, what have I done?
Yeah. Like, I mean, I've walked many miles in Bruce McAllister's shoes. In other words, I've hosted many panels. I've moderated many forums. I mean, that's what I do professionally. And I understand that sometimes off the cuff, you want to deliver a one-liner that'll bring down the house. Yeah, you want to deliver a one-liner that's going to, feed the beast, that's going to get the room riled up and raucous, that's going to prompt some applause. And I think it was an ill-timed comment. We're not going to spend a ton of time talking about it. I like I said yesterday, it's a messed up thing to say. And I think that for the most part, we can all agree on that. You can check out my tweets. I saw Emily in our live chat. Emily was one of the first ones in commenting this morning. What's up, Emily G? And she said, did you guys see Jespo's tweets yesterday? She says, she goes, he was getting pretty spicy when it came to this stuff. And I was like, I don't typically, I don't know why I don't do this anymore. I think I used to on Twitter, like back in the heyday, you know what we're going to do, John? I'm going to press pause because I'm about to launch into a big, huge thing.
But
and we're about to have some fun on this, but I'm going to press pause for a second.
Sure.
Let's get back to this. I'll get into my spicy tweets. We'll hear from the Premier of BC.
And just
we're going to hear more from Danielle Smith.
What I was saying is that I do kind of disagree. I think putting out the pipeline announcement does kind of calm the crowds on this Alberta Next thing. It strong arms and jumps the gun on a Grey Cup announcement, and it does. It's all thumbs up for Danielle Smith right now dealing with all this stuff.
Yeah, I want to get to more in our live chat as well, powered by Park Power. You guys are on fire this morning. Grateful to have you here on this episode of Real Talk. Before we go any further, I want to remind you how proud we are to partner with The Helm. As a matter of fact, I'm wearing one of my favorite jackets right now. The Chad at The Helm personally insisted that I put on, and the minute that I did, I loved it. Happened to be hosting an event at the Edmonton Food Bank today, so I got to look my best. Anytime I got to look my best, I head into The Helm and their beautiful downtown location. This is a 3-story retail experience, and I say that word on purpose. I use the word experience intentionally. As you can see, if you're watching us on YouTube or if you're watching us on any of our live streaming on social media, they have their full lineup out, John, and it looks absolutely stunning. I love how they stage it. I love that when I walk into The Helm, there is a friendly attendant ready, a professional that understands how looks come together, how fits come together, ready to help me look my best. The Helm, right in Edmonton's downtown core. That beautiful location is focused on custom suits and luxury casual wear. So if you love Ralph Lauren or Zegna, Brunello Cucinelli or Luigi Bianchi, you're going to love The Helm. You can also find them online at thehelmclothing.com, but I do recommend, take an hour, treat yourself. Walk in there, grab a bottle of sparkling water, and just see what the team can do to get you looking your best at thehelmclothing.com. Now you're coming home with all these beautiful new sport coats, brand new denim. You want somewhere beautiful to store your new shoes. Well, it might be time to get in touch with California Closets. Best in the business for custom closets and storage solutions for the entire home. I'm talking including laundry rooms, your garage, your boot room, your staircase, wherever you can maximize impact and improve the value of your home, plus your experience living in it. California Closets will meet you right there. A proudly Canadian-owned and operated company, a family-owned business that guarantees their installations for life. The California Closets journey begins with a free consultation. Absolutely nothing to lose. Sit down with one of their team members and find out how they can custom design an installation to fit your space and your budget. You can request that consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. At edmontonforeveryone.ca, you can read more about what Civic Service Union 52 is up to. This is CSU 52, more than 7,000 frontline and professional workers across Edmonton and parts of Alberta, including members from the City of Edmonton, EPCOR, Capital Power, Edmonton Public Library, TELUS World of Science, plus the Valley View Municipal Library. They're building an Edmonton for everyone. And you can read more about their work on their website. That's edmontonforeveryone.ca. These are the people who build, maintain, and serve Alberta's capital every single day. And this election, CSU 52 is prioritizing a safe, smart, and welcoming city. That's what they're looking for. That's their priority. You can read more at edmontonforeveryone.ca. And finally, our friends at the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce. John, they've got their boots out. They've got their buckles ready to rock. That's right. Canadian Finals Rodeo is upon us. And nothing says community like pancakes and rodeo spirit. Today, if you're listening to this today, Thursday, October 2nd, all the way through till 10:30, you have a chance to join the Chamber together with Explore Edmonton at a free rodeo-style pancake breakfast in celebration of Canadian Finals Rodeo. Bring your boots, bring your appetite. Join them till 10:30 today for a morning of good food, good company, and a true rodeo kickoff. You can find more details at edmontonchamber.com.
Good friend Mark Doran in the chat today.
He's been all over it, eh?
Yeah, in regards to that pipeline stuff, the announcement from Smith, he said rumors were everywhere 48 hours before in his circles. So
Yeah. Mark's plugged in. Mark's been on the show before. I always like to provide reference for people that may not know. So Mark's in our chat on a regular basis. He's also, I think he's the founder, but he's at least the face of the Polluter Pay Federation. So he's been on the show before with Reagan Boychuk talking about landowner interests and basically the environmental reparations that need to happen due to oil and gas activities. We call it the orphan wells, basically. If you ever want to lie awake at night, if you want to lose like 5 hours of sleep and wake up with a pit in your stomach, start digging into Alberta's environmental liabilities. That's a good look if you're looking to rob yourself of 5 hours of sleep at night. Cassandra says, I think that it's very telling that none of the oil and gas companies are backing a pipeline to the West Coast, especially when we just built one that hasn't yet reached capacity. Ken K, thanks for your YouTube channel membership, Ken. Ken with spicing it up says, I don't give a flying fuck if they build a pipeline, says Ken. I just don't want taxpayers to pay for it. If there's no private capital that has economic motivation to do it, then there is no reason for us to pay. I would say cards on the table. I feel the exact same way that Ken does. I think that a new pipeline would be beneficial for Alberta. I think it would bolster Alberta's economy. If the justification is there, if the economists, if the people smarter than almost all of us decide or believe that there is global demand for this, that you can not just get your money back from this, but that this will be a profitable endeavor. If there's proper consultation with First Nations communities in particular on the West Coast, if it can be built responsibly, all the things that I think are pretty common sense, then I think that a pipeline would be great news for Alberta, and I think it would be great news for Canada. I also think it would send a great message across Canada that you can build big projects in this country. But if taxpayers are on the hook, then I think that this is a non-starter. And I think that the Premier alluded to as much. When I say the Premier, I should clarify Smith, because a lot of the Premiers had something to say about this within the last 12 hours or so. And that includes BC's Premier, David Eby, who wanted to talk. You remember the last time, the two premiers kind of squared off, BC and Alberta. And I should provide some context because it's really nothing new. The provinces love each other. There's this geographic proximity. All of us in Alberta love a lot of people in BC, and we know that there are people in BC that have a lot of love for us, but at the same time, we can acknowledge that there are very different interests, a very different political climate. Vancouver is very different from Edmonton. Calgary is very different from Burnaby, as an example, although there are some shared values. So how do you find that sweet spot? Here's what BC's Premier had to say right back to his counterpart in Alberta.
You know, it's neighborly relations are crucial between Alberta and British Columbia. And that's a relationship that needs to go both ways. British Columbia has literally tens of billions of dollars of real private sector shovel-ready projects that are going to drive forward not just our economy here in BC, but the national economy at a time that the national economy is under direct threat and attack by Donald Trump. The problem that we have is that Premier Smith continues to advance a project that is entirely taxpayer funded, has no private sector proponent, is not a real project, and is incredibly alarming to British Columbians, including First Nations along the coast, whose support is required for the success of the billions of dollars in real projects that I'm talking about. We need a major projects office at the federal level, not a major distractions office, not a major politics office, but an office that advances real shovel-ready projects that will move this economy forward in British Columbia and nationally. And what I am seeing from Alberta directly threatens that. So I am all for working closely with Alberta on electrical intertie that's going to drive down electrical rates for Alberta consumers. On the hydrogen sector, that is, we both need the federal government to assist us with getting hydrogen to market to build that economy. On other major infrastructure projects and projects that have real private sector backing that aren't entirely taxpayer-funded wedge politics. And
not entirely wedge politics. So, I see some in the chat suggesting, I think it was Kenzie, it just disappeared. I apologize. There's a lot of people contributing today, which is great, but suggesting that Alberta should shut down all trade corridors that would impact BC here. You think back to where this went. You remember the wine ban? You remember when Christy Clark and Rachel Notley were locking horns? But before that, you had the Redford government there. You've had some tension, I think, between the two provinces on other files more recently with different premiers. But there's always kind of been this idea that these big projects need to benefit both provinces and share their priorities. So Eby, I'm not going to say he's pissed, but he sounds irritated. And it sounds like he's irritated that BC's LNG expansion, I think he perceives, could be threatened by this. He's almost putting alternative priorities in front of Albertans who are listening to the news. You know what I'm saying? Like, Eby's talking about hydrogen. Eby's talking about getting power rates down to a province, Alberta, that saw the biggest increase in utility costs of any province or territory in Canada.
How's your
over
utility
the past 2
bill
years
right now?
Well, I'm with Park Power, so it's pretty damn good.
Oh man, they sent me an email the other day because mine are
you got to get
mine
there.
are not great, and I look over time. I'm like, is this because it's winter or because it's summer? We're running the AC units, whatever, and it's generally the same every month, and it's like twice as much, I would say, it was 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, it's been wild for a lot of people. I'm tempted to go right into a Park Power ad read, but I won't. But I will let you know they have a new promotional power rate of 7.28 cents per kilowatt hour. That's the lowest in Alberta. You can check out more parkparkpower.ca/.
Well, they got everything. Don't they got internet now? No.
They do. Yeah. This is Kubi, but we are. They can work together. You know what I'm saying? Like these power. The conversation happens there, where you're looking at someone like. Hey, this is an impromptu. This is not an ad read. I'm just saying. this is what happens here. Go to Kubi, put solar panels on your roof. Park Power has their solar club, and you can sign up for the solar club. I'll get back to the subject matter at hand. But I'm just saying, like, hey, listen, on Real Talk, we're for real. I told you yesterday, Friesen Brothers, 15% off that day. I'm telling you, Park Power, lowest promo power rate. Save yourself some money. Support our partners. It supports the show, but you literally, this is not like a thing where you will save more money with our partners. But I think it's interesting to hear Eby talking about that and reminding Albertans that they're paying some of the highest power rates in the country, and reminding Albertans that there is that hydrogen option that some folks in Alberta are bullish on, but not all. And one of the reasons I think why, remember we did that whole episode, what was it, about a year ago? We did an entire episode on a new community east of Edmonton around Sherwood Park. The plan is for it to be Canada's first fully powered and heated hydrogen community, the first one in the nation. It would be very innovative, but I do believe, even by the comments we got on that episode, that a lot of folks in Alberta in particular that are working in oil and gas see alternative energy, including geothermal, nuclear, solar, and probably hydrogen, as threats to Alberta's future prosperity with oil and gas. I think some people just, whether it's valid
wind,
or whether it's legit, wind, I think a lot of people just inherently are absolutely against it.
I don't get that, though, because, like, okay, when I say Texas, what's the first thing you think of?
When I think of Texas?
Yeah, in terms of energy.
Well, I mean, I guess oil and gas.
Yeah.
And, Houston.
But Texas is the...
I don't know why I started thinking about the Dallas Cowboys. I think because I just finished watching the documentary. I was like...
If we're talking energy and I say Texas, you think of an oil rig. You think of
course.
Everything's bigger in Texas. You think
offshore drilling. And
guys in cowboy hats. You think of oil money, white suits, all that stuff. But in the States, Texas also leads in total renewable energy output. Why? Because Texas, being an oil state, is not actually an oil state. They're an energy state, and they want to make money in energy however they can. So being invested in oil is a priority to them, but also a priority is being up on what is big nowadays. And green energy, wind, solar it's another way to make money. So total energy output for the states, Texas is leading in green energy. And you wouldn't think that. So Alberta we can do that too. Well, we can be energy capital, not just oil capital.
I think that's a great example. I think China's another good example, right? Sure. A lot of people will look at China and say that China's onboarding, new coal plants, and China's bullish on coal more than anybody. So what the hell is going on?
Well, they're trying their damnedest to get off.
China's also doing more than anybody else on on EVs. China's doing more than anybody else on solar. China's, I see Jim in the chat. Jim, I hear you loud and clear. Jim says, okay, fine, a new pipeline, blah, blah, blah. Can we please spend some more time talking about how public education is being dismantled in Alberta? I will let you know that we do have the Alberta Teachers Association President Jason Schilling confirmed right out of the gate. Supriya is going to hang tight for a few minutes on Monday morning. That's going to be, what is it, the 4th, 5th, 6th of October. The 6th of October, Jason Schilling will be joining us in studio, and obviously we will be talking about the state of public education in the province of Alberta. We've also got a lot of people that are not convinced at all that taxpayers are not going to be footing the bill for this. Some of you are suggesting that you just basically feel like this is a political exercise, that this is a publicity stunt, that Albertans are going to be left on the hook paying for all of this. Danielle Smith did respond to Premier Eby's comments and talked about kind of, well, I'll just hand it over to her so you can hear her words on it. But basically, like the spirit of a nation. I'm not going to call it Trumpian, but she did muse about if we had the opportunity to redraw provincial borders, what that might look like. But here's Alberta's Premier in her own words.
No, I would say this, that, if we had been able to redraw the map at the founding of Alberta, maybe we would have drawn it with a little bit of British Columbia so that we had a port. Maybe Port of Prince Rupert would have been part of Alberta as opposed to part of British Columbia. But we didn't have the luxury of doing that. Instead, to make sure that we were a country, we built the Trans-Canada Railroad, we built the Trans-Canada Highway. We've partnered with British Columbia to ensure that their natural gas can make it through Alberta, through a pipeline to get to the U.S. market. And we've wanted to make sure that all of the goods that come into British Columbia, into their ports, have free entry and free access through Alberta. That's the deal that we have. I think that coastal provinces have a special obligation to be generous in making sure that we're creating access to ports for all of our products. I know that Alberta shares that view. I have not publicly opposed any project that has been proposed by any of my premierial counterparts. I'm very supportive of any of their aspirations, and we're going to make sure that we can find areas of common ground. I would say about this project in particular, it was approved. It was going to go ahead, and yet a political decision canceled it. So this was a shovel-ready project some 10 years ago, and now it's a matter of seeing with the technical changes, with some of the advancement technology, with some of the things that we know about building to the coast, with some of the new expectations about Indigenous equity ownership. Now we're going to see if we can revitalize that and maybe have a shortcut because it was ready to go just a short time ago. So I will continue, as I said, to work to build the coalition of partners who are going to be on board with this. But this is a Canada project, and this is a test of whether Canada works as a country. Because if we can't build with collaboration of the federal government and between provinces, if it's everybody gets to get their products going to market except Alberta, that's not a country. A country is one where we support each other. And I think Canadians are there, and I hope that we can get more and more politicians to get there too.
I don't think she's entirely wrong on this is a Canada project, and this is a test for the country. Here's the flip side.
Kumbaya,
right?
my lord.
Why don't we all just gather around a sustainable fire
with wind
not burning
in the background,
not burning old growth forests. No, I don't mean to make light of it, but it is a test for the nation. And we said this with Tasha. By the way, I wanted to address a comment from Mark in our live chat who said about Natasha. He said this guest is biased and has drank the industry Kool-Aid. Who else is coming on to provide less biased commentary? Guys, I think like pretty much every guest that we have on the show, maybe save for a few that aren't as exciting, no offense to them, but like everyone's biased. I'm biased, you're biased, the comments that you leave are biased, your perspective on every issue is biased. Bias is not a dirty word. Bias is what you believe or how your opinion or your ideology has been shaped and how that manifests itself into what you think about issues in front of you. And that's completely fine, right? Like I said yesterday, we catch shit when we have a left winger on. We catch shit when we have a right winger on. I'm not going to bring somebody on every single time we're talking about energy and the economy that wants to kill every single project that's going to happen. That too would be biased. And so you're going to hear different opinions on the show. And that's just the way it's going to be. And that's the way the show always has been. And it's the way the show always will be. And it's okay if you disagree with guests. I think generally speaking, we do a pretty damn good job of covering the spectrum. Max Fawcett is on a regular basis. Max provides, in my opinion, very steady commentary on where the industry is going, and I'm sure that he'll be back in short order. So you've got the nation test here, the test of Canada, whether or not Canada works. This is the way that Danielle Smith puts it. And by the way, that does plant a little seed, doesn't it? Planting little seeds here and there as you're talking. Planting the seed at the beginning of October, saying that this is a test if Canada works. Because if this doesn't happen, then what did you say a number of months ago, and what does that imply now? That Canada, as is, does not work. And then there you've got a very interesting situation for the Premier. But on the flip side, you also have to ask, does Canada work when it comes to consultation? This is what killed Northern Gateway in the first place. This is why the courts shut down that project, because there had been insufficient and insincere consultation, in particular with First Nations communities. So whose perspective matters more? What is the top priority? This is, again, what lands in the lap of Mark Carney. Mark Carney has to decide where the bigger risk is and where the bigger reward is. And I would imagine this is not much different, John, than what households or individuals do before they're making big decisions, and that is the pros and cons list.
Of course, yeah. But I would say to our Premier, if Canada's not working, you could just try restarting. Unplug.
Have you tried unplugging it? I did that last night. It worked perfectly.
Yeah.
Had a little stall on the cable at home. Unplugged it.
You get the blue screen of death. It says Canada is not working. You just unplug.
I counted to 10, and then the next thing you do. But never update. Don't ever
until
update.
You have to.
No, until you absolutely have to. Yeah, that's for sure. So right now, I would imagine, the audience as well split on the idea, which I'm not surprised about. This is sort of how real life works. Super Chat Ken in there. Ken, thanks for your support of the show. Says back in January, the Premier, Danielle Smith, gave royalty in kind subsidies to Enbridge just to expand the main line with tech upgrades. That's a taxpayer subsidy for a pipeline upgrade that needed no regulations or approvals. Michael wonders, maybe I'm just oblivious, but can't they just dust off the original engineering specs for Northern Gateway and save us all a massive amount of money? Like those kids'
Still
books,
looks good.
The storybook. Grandpa, read me this story.
Let me tell you about a project we used to have.
There could be a non-starter. There could be a non-starter element to that, though, absolutely, based on the route that was proposed. This route at this point, this is why they're talking about the engineering. They're saying that the route is not determined. They don't have a plan in place. They're going to spend $14 million for early exploration here. Some of you in the chat who present as though you know what you're talking about. In other words, the way that you're speaking leads me to believe that you may be industry insiders, are very cynical that very much can get done for $14 million.
And also, when you allude to that, of course, they're not going to say a route, because as soon as they say a route, First Nations are going to pipe up, right?
People will chain themselves to trees.
We know it's going through, land that belongs to.
If you're going to get to the coast.
Yeah, bends.
Yeah, absolutely. M. Aitken says a pipeline is not a good deal. A pipeline will not be profitable. And if it was, the oil and gas companies would be all over it. I don't believe that this is all a cynical exercise. I know that some folks are suggesting in our live chat, I appreciate your perspectives, but some of you are suggesting that you believe that the Premier already believes that this is not going to happen and that this is all just an exercise in politicking. I don't believe that.
No, but
I do believe that the province is bullish on this. But exactly, two birds in one stone.
Happens, it's great. If it doesn't, it's good for it too.
Literally nothing to lose. The Premier literally has nothing to lose. Maybe I'm missing something. Shoot it in our live chat. Leave a comment on our YouTube episode. Send us an email to talk@ryanjespersen.com if I'm missing something. But what's the biggest risk here for Danielle Smith? That she alienates, and when I say rabid is the wrong word. I'll take it back before I include it in a sentence. But enthusiastic environmentalists. Is Danielle Smith concerned about losing her existing base of enthusiastic environmentalists? I don't think so. That's not to suggest that there aren't hundreds of thousands or at least thousands of environmentally conscious and responsible conservatives who support the UCP and support Danielle Smith and also want to see projects built properly and, our planet protected for generations to come, of course. But I don't think Danielle Smith's worried about the crowd that's going to be standing in front of bulldozers. That's not her concern.
No, and speaking of the crowds that support, I mean, we were talking about the panel yesterday. We don't want to get back into that, but I mean, have you listened to the whole, like you sent me a 2.5 hour file yesterday, which we played a clip
Alberta
from.
Next panel.
There is some wild things being yelled in the background during opposing views of people who, not even as loud as Evan Lee was, just very calmly asking about things like immigration, the teaching strike that's impending. And there are some wild people in the background who are like, basically saying, F you, go back to where I was like, and nobody's telling them to get out or to be quiet or to get away from the mics. It's wild to me. Go and watch that panel specifically that Evan Lee was at. Where was that?
You can find it on CPAC.
But was it Edmonton, Lethbridge, Medicine Hat?
The Evan Lee incident was in Calgary.
Yeah, Calgary.
But
so go to the Calgary one and just listen as opposing views of the UCP get up and listen to the people in the background, because it's wild that the mics are so loud picking it up. But there are some crazy expletives and things being yelled, and a lot of religious stuff too as well. So I mean, and the premier just sits there, and Bruce just sits there while it goes on. Of course, right? So
of course, I mean that's been the whole thing, and we played that kind of comical mashup yesterday for context that the Alberta NDP put out. And by the way, they didn't put it out after the Evan Lee thing in Calgary. The NDP had released that mashup like weeks ago, showing the moderator. I know it sounds like we're talking about Bruce a lot over these past couple of shows, but that's because he thrust himself into the spotlight on a story that's really gaining traction, so he can own it in so many ways as I would own it if I was in the spotlight having made a comment to an attendee of an event and a fellow Albertan speaking to the premier that they should be spanked. I would probably be all over the news as well. But there has been a pattern. I saw Gilles saying the exact same thing. What's up, Gilles? In our live chat earlier in the show, he says that this has been like a recurring theme at these Alberta Next panels, that the detractors are having their mics cut, that they're being booed and that they're being cut off, and that the people that are obviously friendly and favorable to the government are being given license to speak. I talked about the lady, no offense to the lady, but the lady that went on and on and on talking about how they didn't perform O Canada at the beginning of the ceremony, right? They heard her out. They let her have her say because, number one, you're not going to pull the mic on a little old lady talking about the national anthem. She also said we should sing it to respect those that have fallen for our country, that have given their lives. So, I dare you to pull the mic on that one.
Yeah.
But there has been a gross double standard at these town halls, and I don't think. And I said yesterday, I was all over social media yesterday. I've kind of taken a step back. I don't know if you've noticed. We push out our highlights, we push out our clips. We appreciate you guys supporting them, but I don't get into the muck and mire as much as I used to anymore. Charles Adler talked me out of that. He said you got to stop playing small ball. But yesterday I was having a lot of fun with it, and I basically just said, I asked the question: can anybody take the Alberta Next panel seriously anymore? And the most recurring comment was, were you taking it seriously in the first place?
Well, we are. I mean, somebody just commented, did I just skip ahead? No, I listened to almost 2 hours of the 2.5 hours because at the start and end, there's an intro and outro that I kind of skipped through. But there's one point, Ryan, in that panel in Calgary where a man steps up and he's basically glorifying Danielle and saying he loves everything she's doing. And he stops, but he's still got more time. And Bruce says, please continue, sir. He's trying to allot him to say more. And whereas other people are being screamed expletives at each other, having their mics cut off, you can't say that this isn't, as you would use the term, bias. You can't say that this isn't shutting down. But at the same time, I'll go back to this. And again, I've drummed up the Alberta Next panel when you said we're done talking about it. But I just don't see how someone with the smarts of Danielle sat in a room and was like, there's no way this could go wrong. If I was on that media team, I would stand up and say, I would stake my career on this. do not do this. We don't need to do this.
Yeah.
You could go in a room with 5 of the team and do a news brief every day that would go over way better than this.
Yeah. Ken K says Park Power is absolutely awesome. Garth says my EPCOR plan just ended and I'm looking at Park Power. What are you waiting for, pal? What are you waiting for? If you go to parkpower.ca/real talk, you'll find a way that you can actually bundle your services and you can actually save $150 off your first bill with bundled services. That's exclusively for Real Talkers. Again, parkpower.ca/real talk. Now, it is Thursday. I want to get to more. We're going to get to more of your comments. We're going to get to more of what you have to say on this story, the story that the entire country is talking about. That is, Alberta wants a new pipeline. Will Ottawa deliver? But every Thursday, in partnership with our friends at Play Alberta, we have a chance to shine a spotlight on our home province. We're so proud to live in Alberta and focus on a story of Alberta winning. That's right, Alberta Wins, presented by our friends at Play Alberta. And today, John, we are saluting the wonderful community of Innisfail. Yeah, that's right, this wonderful community. I love their mayor, Jean Barclay, does an unbelievable job. They also, by the way, offer a wonderful alternative to the traffic in Gasoline Alley. If you're headed from Edmonton to Calgary or Calgary to, this is not what the segment is about, by the way. This is just a little tip from me to you. Gasoline Alley in Red Deer gets so clogged up, doesn't it? Gets so backed up. Pump into Innisfail next time. You'll find you'll knock 20 minutes off your trip. Now, the town of Innisfail has just been awarded a huge award. This is at Carbon Capture Awards Canada, and that is the CCUS Leader of the Year Award. This is a huge deal for this community just south of Red Deer. So they've been handed this prestigious award by Carbon Capture Canada. We can put a picture up of all of them that'll show you basically reason for excitement because they're recognizing the role that Innisfail is playing in hosting Canada and really North America's first commercialization level direct air capture test center. This is called Deep Sky Alpha. I'm not sure if you've heard about it, but they're not just capturing emissions from smokestacks. This thing has just gone online. Like, I'm talking weeks ago. These are machines that literally pull CO2 out of the ambient air, liquefy it, and then inject it deep underground for permanent storage. This was built and commissioned in under a year. It's located on a 5-acre industrial parcel in Innisfail. Deep Sky Alpha is technology agnostic. So that means like multiple direct air capture systems from across Canada and around the world are operating side by side under one roof, under the same weather conditions, under the same site conditions. It's like a real world lab. And so when the numbers roll in, Deep Sky Alpha is set to capture 3,000 tons of CO2 per year, and that's just its first phase. So you may say, well, that sounds kind of modest compared to industrial emissions, but this is a critical proof of concept. This is the baseline that they're establishing. And Alberta's geology has a key advantage. The captured emissions will be trucked north and stored, get this, Johnny, 2 kilometers underground in deep saline aquifers where the province Alberta already has decades of expertise. And so financially and politically, this is a win on credibility and leadership, on jobs and investment, on carbon tech export potential. We've been hearing this from Alberta political leaders for 20 years. And on complementing the energy transition. It's the Deep Sky Project. You can actually read more about it at deepskyclimate.com. And a huge shout out to our friends at the town of Innisfail for this big national award. Truly, Alberta wins with this one. I want to talk to you about how Alberta wins with Play Alberta. Not only is it the most safe and secure way to bet casino, sports, and lottery online, not only does all revenue go right back to the province of Alberta, but Albertans are winning big every single day. 10, 50, even $100,000 a day, won on Play Alberta. And for a limited time only, new players can receive a $1,000 casino bonus. You can download the app, check out all the great offers, and get started today. That's playalberta.ca. I think that is your favorite music of all the music beds that we have on the show. That one's got to be your favorite, doesn't it?
Where is the 2 kilometers? Is that Fraggle Rock?
Can you wrap your mind around that?
No, I can't actually. How far is the Earth's core? Like that's.
Don't ask me this question on the fly. How do I know? How deep from the surface is the Earth's core? This is like, it's going to be like, what is this like for an elementary school? The outer core. Oh my gosh, the outer core of planet. This is Chat GPT, so take it for what it's worth. The outer core begins at 2,900 kilometers below Earth's surface. That's 1,800 miles. The inner core starts at 5,100 kilometers. That's 3,200 miles deep.
Total depth.
And the very center of the Earth, the middle of the inner core, is about 6,300 kilometers. That's 4,000 miles down.
Wow.
Wow.
I wouldn't go any farther than 2K.
You wouldn't go any further than 2K.
Unless we want to have one of the, what was the ocean? Remember the big accident with the Ocean Gate, whatever?
Yeah, may they rest in peace.
Yeah,
What was that? How quickly we forget, right?
Travel to the center of
Deep
the Earth.
sea
would be
disaster.
just as
ocean.
dangerous.
That was called, that was the Titan submersible.
Yeah.
Right? June of 2023, that wreckage in the North Atlantic, killing all 5 people on board. Rest in peace. I don't feel like joking about that.
I watched a documentary on it and on the guy who put it all together, and it's just guy was insane. He went down in it like 3 times by himself, and he recorded the sounds of, the inner shell just crunching away and being like, yep, okay, we got through 3, let's try it again. But experts were warning him, like every crack that you hear is a part of it, the shell being compromised.
Yeah, and they were talking about how it's like, even just if you imagine a tin can, if it's like structurally, the structural integrity
every
of it,
time it gets a little dent.
The minute it gets a little dent in it, it's more likely to crumple, right? It was, the documentary on that was hard to watch because it was just like, you were taking money from these people. Remember there was that billionaire and his son that went on there? It's like,
of course.
Who cares that he's a billionaire? Let's just say a father and his son go on this thing looking for a once-in-a-lifetime experience, obviously, that like 1% of 1% of 1% of 1% of the world would ever get to experience. And they die doing it because they put their faith in somebody who had absolutely zero respect for human life, for process, for safety protocol, because he was so bullish on being that adventurer, on being the cowboy.
He had a dream.
Get down there, right?
He had a dream, and he wanted you to use that certain material, right? He didn't, and maybe that's a bit of cost. Like all the experts were saying, if he had to spend more money and use different materials, it would have been way different. But he wanted to do it his own way. He wanted to be like an inventor. He wanted to be like an Elon Musk, like going out and doing it his own way. But like, just a tragedy. But you should watch the documentary because so many people quit in the weeks, months, and years leading up to this just because they were so scared it was going to happen, and then it happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting comments on bias as I brought that up. We always want to give you the floor, Real Talkers, as much as we can. Bias.
You say it so much when we get into
monorail.
Bias.
Boom Shanker X says, what is incredibly concerning is due to tribalism, we have a very difficult time acknowledging when somebody on the other side says something reasonable. I 100% agree with that. And that's why we try to be here. We call it the mushy middle, John. We call it the mushy middle. Our 10-year-old ran in a cross-country race yesterday. It was cities. It was like the city championship yesterday for elementary kids on the cross-country teams.
Oh.
And Wyatt ran in it, and he finished middle of the pack. And I told him, kiddo, there's absolutely nothing wrong with middle of the pack in a race like this. He goes, I know I'm not going to the Olympics. I said, don't worry about it. I said, you know what? Being a cross-country runner anyway, Wyatt, although it's wonderful, it's a beautiful sport. You get to see vast places. You have the fresh. I said, it's a brutal sport to train.
Yeah. Well, he's
a
tough kid, though. I mean, I don't know if you want to say, but like, the bike
took a big spill on his bike. Yeah. Thank God he was wearing his helmet.
Yeah.
Emerged okay.
Wear your helmet, kids.
Wear your helmet, kids. Yeah, absolutely. Emily referenced early in the show my spiciness on Twitter. I didn't think I was like out of line yesterday, but I was punching back a little bit just because here's my perspective on the John, we're not going to talk about this anymore except for right now when we're going to talk about it again.
We keep saying we're done.
Well, I wanted to do Emily's comment justice and get into some of my comments because I just think that a lot of people's positions on this town hall thing are incongruous and hilarious. So, Evan Lee gets shut down, gets his mic cut, people are booing the decision. People are booing Evan Lee. It's polarizing. It becomes this thing, right? And so we do a show on it, and we're talking about it, and basically have our own perspectives on how we think that should play out, why we believe what we believe about the validity of cutting the mic. I have seen a couple people here. One of you, I think it was Vamp Fashions in the chat. Sorry if it wasn't. One of you in the chat earlier said, I still haven't heard anything that leads me to believe the spanking comment was inappropriate. I think that's ridiculous. But if we just bring it back to the debate of cutting the mic, I think if you're trying to justify the spanking comment, that's ludicrous and ridiculous, and I'm not taking you seriously. If you're trying to justify cutting the mic, I think you can make an argument that you were supposed to stay on track. They're trying to stay focused. This kid was trying, if you want, you can argue that. I still think you pay a political price for it. I think it's a bad look. I think if you're a free speech for the people government, it's a brutal thing to do. I think it sends the wrong message. That's kind of my perspective on it, and I think that a lot of conservatives would agree with that as well. If you stand for what you stand for, then stand for it, right?
No matter who's doing it. If this was at a town hall with Jody Gondek, Ned Nenshi, Carney, anyone, and they were asked an off-topic question and the mic went off, we'd be talking about it as well.
Imagine if Mark Carney and his
Especially
team
if they
cut
said
the
they were
mic
gonna
on an
spank
Alberta
someone.
conservative. People would lose their minds. Right? Who would be the equivalent of, I'm trying to think of someone, who it could have been. She's not anymore, but when Supriya was in the PMO, maybe she could have been the moderator for Justin Trudeau as a former broadcaster or a current broadcaster herself. So you got someone with the broadcast chops making the decision whether or not to cut the mic. I can say, I would estimate, and I was trying to think yesterday, we were trying to do the math. I mean, I've probably hosted or moderated more than 1,000 events over the course of my career. I average 55, 60 a year. I can think of maximum 3 times max where we've cut somebody's mic
at an actual event,
at a forum.
And
that was, and number one I can remember vividly was it's timed out, and you get a certain amount of time at the microphone. It was like, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Please wrap, sir. Thank you, sir. All right, cut his mic. You know what I mean? Like a situation like that. But it wasn't 8 seconds into the question, didn't like the subject matter, get the fuck out of here. That was not the situation. And I think unless it's hate speech, or unless it's something absolutely ludicrous, unless there's profanity directed at a public official, something like that, you should let the person have their 30 seconds, right? So we push this out on social media. You can follow us at Real Talk RJ. Follow me at Ryan Jespersen. Follow Johnny at Johnny Infamous on social media platforms, and we post our highlight from yesterday's show, me sharing my thoughts on this. And Tyler, who operates on X under the handle Haywood Jablomi,
Jesus,
says, the kid was a talking NDP puppet. An hour later, he's having coffee with Nenshi. He was there to disrupt, not to ask questions. I don't agree with Bruce's comment, but his mic should have been cut. To which I responded, as opposed to all the talking UCP puppets in the audience. Obviously, I say the opposition reached out to him immediately after he was insulted because it's a gift served up to them on a silver platter. What's the purpose of a town hall if not to hear from the public? I don't know if that was the one that got Emily's attention. I'm disappointed that Eric Rocket Fan deleted his tweet. I guess he didn't like the attention when I amplified it, but he called Evan Lee an obnoxious, entitled little puke. And so I asked, an obnoxious, entitled little puke, how exactly? I said we heard half a sentence from him. He's a high school student concerned about the future of education in Alberta, his future. I said we should be so lucky to have engaged young people eager to participate in politics. And there was this one from Titus. Titus was all over me yesterday. Said only an NDP plant wouldn't be able to follow simple guidelines and instead go on an indignant, low IQ rant. To which I couldn't help myself but replying, I've heard a lot of indignant, low IQ rants at Alberta political gatherings, and very few have been delivered by high school students about to watch their teachers go on strike.
Yeah. How many, left-leaning town halls or liberal town halls or even news briefings. And now we have reporters from, these outside, companies, Rebel, Juno, whoever, who are asking way off-topic questions in the middle of briefings about totally different things. So, I mean, if anyone had made a spanking comment and cut off a mic, I think that's what you were alluding to yesterday. Is man, what a miss by Bruce. And I hope the team and Danielle said that afterwards, was you could have just calmly answered the question, even after the mic went off. And this might have never got its head above water. We would never be talking about it. If you said, hey, that is off topic, but here's a little tidbit, from one of our panel members, or, Miss, Premier, do you want to answer this for a second? Or even saying, he says a lot. I noticed as I watched it for 2 hours, hey, that's off topic, but we'll put that in the Premier's closing comments. He pushes it to the end. He could have done anything like that.
Yeah, 100%. And this is like, you get to the point where it's like, do you stand for what you stand for? And if you don't stand, like if a town hall, I understand people are saying, listen, you guys, and you're not wrong on this. You're not wrong on this. We're spending a lot of time talking about something that we weren't going to talk about.
We're done talking about this.
But it all kind of factors in too, doesn't it? Like if
he's a media guy.
But it ties into, I'm done. I guess I'm done talking about Bruce in the sense that I think that like he fucked up. He made a bad decision. He made a weird remark. He has kind of sort of apologized on social. No, he did apologize on social media. We'll see if his behavior changes. We'll see if they have him moderating the online version of the Alberta Next panel, which is set to roll out. I think there's 2 left this month. Maybe there's just 1 left. We'll see if that happens. But bigger picture, it does all fit together because it's like, is this province serious about hearing detracting voices? Is this province serious about, here's the word, the recurring word, consultation? Is the province serious about consultation? And so if you're going to talk about building a new pipeline, for example, this is the big new fresh story in Alberta and across the country this week. If you're serious about it, then you got to be serious about consultation. And if you're cutting mics at town halls, then how serious are you? You know what I'm saying? So let us know what you think on this. I'm going to get to more of the live chat. Plus, we've got some details coming up on our episode tomorrow. You're not going to want to miss it. A packed studio and in-house Real Talk mayoral debate featuring the top 3 polling candidates in the city of Edmonton. Calgary's mayoral debate on Real Talk will follow a week later. That's Friday, October 10th. It's not too late for you to submit a question for our consideration. We'll lay out the debate format. The Calgary debate, October 10th, right here on Real Talk, live at 8:30 Mountain Time on October 10th, 8:30 Mountain Time on Friday, October 3rd. With Tim Cartmel, Andrew Knack, and Michael Walters. You can always send your emails in 24 hours a day to talk@ryanjespersen.com.
Edmonton is here because the river is here. So we care for it, protect it, share it. The water of the North Saskatchewan sustains all of us. It's a big job to treat and deliver it, river to tap, to over 1 million people. So you can have and enjoy a glass of the Sask. On tap, made local by Epcor.
Got a message for established professionals and business owners. If you're asking yourself the big financial questions like, should I be paying myself in dividends or salary? That's a huge question for entrepreneurs. Or should I be putting savings into my TFSA or my RSP, or maybe just leave investment inside my corporation for my eventual retirement? Is there another option that my current investment advisor has not put in front of me? For North Road Investment Council, these are the questions that they help their clients answer every single day. So for real talkers whose businesses are earning greater than $200,000 or more annually, or if you're over the age of 40, an option that deserves serious consideration is that individual pension plan called the IPP, a powerful retirement strategy that can provide higher tax-deferred savings over RRSPs along with a lot of other valuable features, but it's not for everyone. You got to be getting good advice, good counsel, and that's why the team at North Road has put together a clear, plain language white paper outlining the benefits and the challenges of an IPP so you can learn if it's right for you. You can request your copy today by reaching out to Marshall Carey and their team at North Road Investment Council. You'll find them online at northroadic.com. Hey, we referenced that carbon capture award earned by the town of Innisfail. You know, Pathways Alliance, of course, known nationally, even internationally, as a key project when it comes to the sustainability and the future of the oil sands. It goes without saying that Canada benefits from a strong energy sector, and the oil and gas sector supporting over 446,000 jobs across Canada while generating billions of dollars in tax and royalty revenue. You know, the contributions of the oil sands industry help fund roads, bridges, schools, and more. And that's why 6 of the biggest oil sands companies in the country are working together to help grow Canada's economy. You can learn more about the project, the one that Mark Carney was talking about here a few weeks ago, by visiting pathwaysalliance.ca. If we're talking hospitals, how can we not celebrate 125 years at the Royal Alexandra Hospital in Alberta's capital city? For 125 years. Wrap your mind around that. The Royal Alex has been so much more than just a building. It's a place where moments of care echo through generations. From the first breath of a newborn, what a moment, to the comfort given in life's hardest moments. Every story within the walls of the Alex sends out ripples, touching families, impacting communities, and inspiring the care of tomorrow. These are the echoes of the Alex. And with your gift today, those echoes will continue, carrying forward hope and healing and compassion for generations yet to come. You can show your support today. If your family has connected with the Royal Alex, and I can almost say with confidence, if you're anywhere in central northern Alberta, even BC, Saskatchewan, who hasn't had some connection to the Alex? You can make your donation today by visiting Give to the Alex or go to support.royalalex.org. We'll link to that in the show notes. Consider a one-time gift, a monthly gift. And from all of us here, here's to the next 125 years at the Royal Alexandra Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
I think of our family. When I read that, I don't know if you heard, I find myself getting choked up even for a quick second.
100%.
Even our family, we've had some really low moments, tough moments at the Alex.
Yeah.
And two of the best moments of my life, the two best moments of my life, the arrivals of Wyatt and Noah at the Royal Alex. Everybody has their story.
I was just going to allude to that I was like, two things. I was getting a little choked up. I was also thinking of a friend of mine who just moved back from Fort Mac, now working at the Royal Alex, the nurses and all the people there who just put in time. And then I was also, and I don't mean to make light of it, but I was also thinking about the title, and I was like, Echoes of the Alex. I know it's about heartwarming stories and like contributing to the community and uplifting these people that work there, but it also makes me think of ghosts. I got a little scared.
Yeah, well, sure. I mean,
because my friend who works there says that, hey, if you want to go ghost hunting, a hospital's a place to do it,
Oh my gosh. You know what? I'm excited. We can tell Real Talkers this starting next Tuesday and every Tuesday moving forward. We're actually going to have a feature segment.
Excited for
We're
this.
working with the Royal Alexandra Hospital and their foundation. They're doing amazing work, and you're going to learn more about some of the projects that they're doing. They're working with the unhoused population. They're talking about holistic health care.
Yeah.
They're doing some incredible work when it comes to social services and well beyond what you might assume a hospital foundation or a hospital would be working on or would be involved with or would be leading the charge on. Like, it's not just like broken ankles and stab wounds. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of stuff that's happening there, helping folks get their lives back together and live healthy. So every Tuesday, moving forward, for the next number of months, we'll have a special feature. It's going to be like 2 minutes called Echoes of the Alex. And you're going to learn more stories through 125 years. It's really neat. I'm excited about it.
I love this now. We got a feature every day telling you about Alberta, telling you about Edmonton, telling you about different stories that we can fit in that we don't have to talk about in our regular chat where we're 100% talking about the Alberta Next panel.
We're going to have a weekly feature. I mean, I guess the flamethrower presented by DQ is your chance to blow a gasket once a week.
Somebody wants to do an Alberta
by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Yeah.
I do want to mention this today before we go. I know you're going to get back to more comments.
You talking Jane?
We lost a great. I want to mention. I'll go first. Just if you have a story about Jane. When I was younger,
Jane Goodall, of course.
Jane Goodall passing away yesterday, and
91.
Just wild. The first time I ever saw like a documentary or like a special on how she interacts with chimpanzees, monkeys, saves them from environments. But I remember the first visual I ever saw of her was a primate walking up to her. There's a crowd of like researchers, and they're in some jungle setting. I forget where it was. And it's kind of skittish of all these people, but it walks right up. And this was like a full-grown adult. I'm not sure if it was male or female primate. And it got up into her arms, like a backpack on her. And it just, the way she was whispering into its ear. And I was just like, who is this person? First of all, primates, incredibly how humanistic their mannerisms are. But the sense of calm and comfort they had around this person. Jane Goodall was like, she was a primate whisperer. She was someone who like understood these animals on a level that was just it's incomprehensible to people. So
do you know what's I mean, there's a million things that are wild about her story and so impressive about her story. But she actually had no, like at the beginning of her career, which I'm not even sure if she would have seen as the beginning of a career. She was just getting involved in stuff that she was passionate about and interested in, but she had no formal scientific training when she first went in. I think it was Tanzania where she first started, and she was like just an interested person. Mm-hmm. She was just a curious person that obviously had a very natural gift. Sort of the art of observation, like you said, the connection that she had in particular with chimpanzees. Last time I said chimpanzees into a microphone, I got fired.
That's why I said primate, because she worked with gorillas mostly, but she worked with all. Yeah.
She worked with a lot, but she was primarily, I think, known at least early on, and before she founded the Jane Goodall Institute, for her work with chimps. But like the impact of her work. I was seeing, watching some tributes to her last night and just what different, in particular folks in animal conservation and the scientific community have to say about her. And one of the things they were saying, like her early research, she was studying how these primates were taking these long, not blades of grass, but basically like long vegetation, right? Like long, stiff vegetation, long and stiff, John. And she was watching these primates take these long blades of grass and feed them down these like ant holes or termite holes or what have you, and then wait there. These primates, they would wait there, and they would wait until all the little bugs and the insects would get onto the blades of grass or whatever vegetation they're using, and then pull them out and then eat the insects. And, scientists are saying present day in 2025 that her revelations around that and her early research on that, her observations around that, helped advance the understanding of animals, and particular mammals, using tools in a major way. Like that was something that she observed in the field. But I think that her work on STEM and her work on getting young people enthusiastic about science and research, her work in wildlife conservation, the way that she was recognized and honored by, it seems like almost every country. Like there's some honor, the Dame of the British Empire, and she was honored in the United States and honored in Queen Canada Elizabeth. And honored everywhere. Yeah. It just goes to show like the legacy that she leaves. Jane Goodall was one of those people. It felt like, I'm not trying to make this controversial, but you saw that a flotilla was intercepted the other day, about 40 boats, and on one of the boats was Greta Thunberg, and good on Greta for doing her thing. I'm not going to get into this. I know that's a trigger for a lot of people, but I'm just going to say Greta's got her thing. Started young, is sticking with it. Has a huge voice, has a huge presence globally. Participates in protests that she cares deeply about, obviously, etc. But she's very polarizing. To a degree, actually, that I think is unhealthy and a little bit crazy, especially considering her age. But Jane Goodall, if you look, like there's no haters, right? Except for maybe, I don't think poachers loved her. Poachers probably aren't big Jane Goodall fans, but other than that, universally loved.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. She just seems like a person who just was like, you see those people who become famous or lifted up, and you're like, they were meant to do this. Like as a child, she carried around a stuffed chimpanzee called Jubilee, and that was like what sparked her love of animals. I mean, she had 40 honorary degrees. She went to Cambridge and got a PhD. 40 honorary degrees. She went to, you mentioned the Dame Commander Order of the British Empire. Yeah. But like she was also like, I've never heard of this before. She got a PhD from Cambridge without a prior bachelor's degree. How hard is that to do? That's like, seems crazy. And then just founding, of course, the Institute in 1977, which, I mean, nobody argued against anything she was doing. And this is one of the coolest facts about Jane Goodall. She was the first person to observe chimpanzees making and using tools. Like they were taking sticks and catching termites and stuff like that. I remember seeing video of that. That's a behavior thought to be like uniquely human before. So she really like humanized. She really like, I'm a big animal lover, and she brought that to the fold where we thought, hey, these beings are so close to us, we need to protect them, right? Yeah. And I'll go back to that clip again, just seeing the fear in this primate. I think it was a gorilla who just saw the team and being like, you're not supposed to be in my home in the jungle, but immediately looking at Jane and going over and embracing her as if she gave off this aura, as
well
if
said.
like, I'm here to help you. It was just, I don't know. There's something inside her that she just knew she was always going to do this. She was going to be this person, right? So
absolutely. Yeah. It's funny. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I've been stalling our live chat here on my screen, trying to pause it to get back to comments on the polarized politics of pipelines, and now I'm like, I got to just fast forward here to see what people are saying about Jane Goodall, right? Because like, I think that's probably a way that we can end on a positive note. Ivana's watching us live on YouTube. What's up? Thanks for being here. She says there's that quote from George of the Jungle. Madam, I knew Jane Goodall, and you are no Jane Goodall. Very well said. Once you work yourself into pop culture and into movies, then you know that you've made it, right? Yeah, I mean, this is just, people are talking again about just how her legacy lands with them or memories they have with her. Obviously people had, Tommy's not that impressed that they can use tools. He says, yeah, monkey can peel a banana too. Yeah, we take the knowledge that we have now and apply it. Looking back, I guess maybe it was lost on folks, the intelligence of these animals. Are you going to be too bummed out if we talk about the Marineland beluga whales? That might bum us out.
Yeah.
Tasha Kheiridden earlier today in the episode when she brought up
alluded to you.
Well, but she was talking about like belugas in the wild. Mm-hmm. This story about Marineland in Ontario is an absolute masse. So they've got these basically.
I grew up in Ontario.
Talk to us. Did you ever go to Marineland?
Yes.
Okay. No, you don't
I went to Marineland. There was a jingle. If there's anybody in the chat or listening to this who grew up in Ontario in the late 80s, early 90s, late 90s, there was a jingle on the radio, on TV that you could not get away from. It was part of Ontario life growing up. And then the catch at the end was, everyone loves Marineland.
Except for all the animals.
And kids just would go around singing it. But we never understood when we were young that this was basically a prison for animals that should be out in the middle of the ocean, right? So It was kind of ingrained in you that this place was like a child, like it was a wonderland for kids, and the song was in your head all the time. But at the same time, it's horrible what happened there.
Sure, and so it's now in receivership.
Yeah,
and so this is a battle of this is government jurisdiction basically. I only know this, no pun intended, on a surface level. We're not going to dig too deeply in it, but I think it should be on Canadians' radar, and I'm curious to know where Real Talkers stand on it. This is, I guess, I'm soliciting feedback from you. Send us an email if you have a thought on this. But you've got 30 beluga whales, and I've heard at least 3 different options that they're exploring for these beluga whales. But one of the options, and probably the primary option for the company behind Marineland, or at least the company managing the receivership, it's bankruptcy. It's they're screwed. Believed that they had found a home for the 30 whales. Can you imagine, by the way, the logistics of transportation? Wild, the logistics. Maybe they just put them all in a big net and pull them through the ocean over to but in China, there was an opportunity to move these 30 whales to China, and the federal government, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, has denied Marineland's request to export its remaining beluga whales to China. I'm showing you right now. This is on CNN World News. So this is a global story that people are following. Did you know, I learned this yesterday in just doing a tiny bit of research on this story to understand it better. Johnny, it costs $2 million a month.
I was going to say.
To keep these whales. Yeah. And the federal minister went on the record yesterday in an interview with CBC that I saw, said that she toured the facility and said that it made her sick to her stomach. Yeah. Said seeing these 30 whales in captivity. The park is not open, but these 30 whales are here, and basically, the federal government's position is that unless they can find a more palatable and appropriate home for these whales, it's over to the province of Ontario. The province of Ontario says that the federal government needs to step up here, and if it doesn't, these whales will be euthanized. And so they're not sending them to China. Premier Doug Ford believes, he says that they've got to explore options, which of course he's got to say this, you got to try to solve it. But he says maybe we send 2 here, 2 there, 2 here, 2 there. I mean, you got to find 15 different scenarios to send 2 whales each time. For whatever reason, the China thing is not palatable to the federal government. They believe that it's inhumane. There are some suggestions from some animal rights groups. I saw Camille Labchuk. She's been on the show before. Big on animal justice, animal rights. They want to see the construction of a beluga whale sanctuary off coastal waters in Ontario. It is possible to build this. They say that logistically it would be difficult and it couldn't be built immediately, but you can construct what would essentially be a beluga whale sanctuary with like underwater boundaries off Ontario coastline or wherever they would do. I don't know where they're going to do it. Somewhere in Canada, presumably. But this is a situation where I think, like, you know, the average Canadian that looks at this, the question ultimately is like, should the federal government or should different levels of government, you know, Ontario and Ottawa, step up to spend billions millions or tens of millions or even hundreds of millions on constructing a sanctuary or trying to broker some sort of appropriate destiny for these whales, or will 30 beluga whales be euthanized because humans that place them in captivity now can't figure out what to do with them now that the business model of the home of their captivity is broken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm worried about this for zoos in general. Like, they all got to be, like, in this day and age, I mean, we can follow animals with cameras and drones and everything. And the cost of shutting down all these, what do you call them? Theme parks, establishments, whatever they are, is going to be a lot more than money. It's sad to say it, but I fear that a lot of animals, as these places close, are just going to be euthanized because their time is up. They were monopolized, and now, like, can you even, I was just thinking this, like, an animal, say a whale born in captivity or in captivity since it was a youth, can you even throw one of those back in the ocean and let it fend for itself?
I don't think
with
so.
With other bands
No.
like, in Vancouver, I remember somebody mentioned in this chat, they used to have killer whales. And I was like, how do you put a killer whale back into its original environment after it's been in captivity
impossible.
for
You can't
a
do
decade?
it. You can't do it.
So
wasn't that the Free Willy storyline? I don't remember it well enough. Didn't they? Wasn't that the whole plan? I don't remember it. I might be totally off on this, but weren't they trying to get Willy out of captivity back into the wild, and then his fin was going to go back up? Wasn't that the whole thing?
And like, then it goes to like, how it's not being heartless, but what's the better option? To throw them back in an ocean where they're probably going to
that's not an
perish
option.
anyways?
It's not an option.
Or put them down, compassionately. And both ways are just like, you've used them for money their whole lives in conditions where we knew as a kid, like, and I get it. I've argued about zoos and captivity and aquariums before that, like, the upside to it is you get children and youth close to animals and they respect nature. And they know that, like, we got to protect these beautiful beings that live on the earth that are in decline everywhere, whether they're land mammals or fish or, ocean mammals or whatever. But at the same time, like, we're way past that now. You can see video of this online. You can teach people in class through the internet. We don't need any places like this anymore. There's no reason to have them. And sorry to the Calgary Zoo, and sorry to the Toronto Zoo, and sorry to Marineland and everywhere else where I know there's people's lives are financially involved in it, etc. But like, they all have to be closed. It's 2025.
I might push back on the Calgary Zoo. I'm trying to find it as we speak right now. We had the zoo CEO. This is a show I'm really proud of, actually. It was a couple years ago. We had the Calgary Zoo CEO on to talk about their Wilder Institute. You can find it. You'll find it on our podcast archive. You'll find it on our YouTube archive. Probably just Google Zoo CEO, Real Talk Ryan Jespersen. But we asked him directly about this and like the future of it and sustainability. I think it was, if I remember correctly, I'm trying to remember the timestamp on that interview. It was shortly after, I think, that giraffe had died. This was like a horrible situation where a zookeeper showed up in the morning. This is, sorry to talk about this, guys, but like a giraffe had like got its neck caught in the fencing and basically like suffocated or strangled itself inadvertently. Like, it was horrible, a horrible discovery for the zookeeper that showed up in the morning. Obviously tragic, a magnificent animal. But we do have these like healthy conversations about the future of the future of zoos. I mean, there's the big one in Cincinnati. There's like big ones around the world and what that looks like. And I think that zoos have to become sanctuaries. In other words, like, Remember the story that we covered with the cougar that was like hunted, that mother cougar outside Canmore, and the 2 cubs that were orphaned, and like what's the future of those cubs going to be that are now being placed in a zoo? You have bears that are orphaned, like mama bear, the sow gets like hit on the railway tracks or hit on the highway. What happens to the cubs? Like I do think there can be some situations where the zoos can serve a valuable purpose. Some of you are pointing out that there are plans in Nova Scotia for a marine sanctuary, like a whale sanctuary. Basically, but I do think the days are gone. I'll be honest with you, I have mixed feelings when I go to the Calgary Zoo. On one hand, they're very good about communicating like where the animals are from and they were rescued from this or they're at, they came from here, born in captivity, whatever the case may be. But I also see a lot of people in the live chat right now. This is a story that's had legs for 20 years to save Lucy, to get this elephant Lucy out of the Edmonton Valley Zoo. It's not going to happen. It's absolutely not going to happen. I can guarantee it. I interviewed Bob Barker personally about this. He's been advocating for this, or had been, may he rest in peace, for quite some time. But I think it's sad to see Lucy. I know I'm going to hear from people that are big backers of the Valley Zoo. You're going to send me emails like you always had about how there's humans that love Lucy and care for her, and she has human companionship, and that's all fine and good. And I'm not cracking on the people that have probably given their lives in passionate service to being with Lucy. But elephants are social animals. They're herd animals, and it is completely inappropriate to have an elephant, a lone elephant by itself. I know that's redundant, to have an elephant by itself in a northern climate in a concrete zoo for 30, 40 years is bonkers, and you would never see a zoo bring in an elephant solo in 2025. Not a chance.
Yeah, I think it's the animals that hurt the most that we know. It's different if Alberta had a zoo, with animals that are native to this province, or even like the climate and environment. But somebody just mentioned in the chat, like when you see a polar bear in a zoo in Texas, you're like, what the this is not right. And when you see marine life in a place like Toronto that is not on the coast, you know what I mean? It's not near, it's close to an ocean, but not directly. You know what I mean? It just it doesn't seem right to have these animals in places where clearly the environment is affecting them. And I know zookeepers will say, we do this and that to get them assimilated or whatever to their environments. But it just more and more, and again, I used to feel like I was in the middle on zoos where I love animals and I want people to respect them and want to protect them. And the only way to do that is to get them up close to them and see how beautiful they are and see how awesome they are. And, but nowadays I just feel we can do that in ways the internet has given us. And it's wild to see a polar bear in a zoo in Texas or marine life in a place that's landlocked. It's like, what's happening?
Yeah. I think there's two. I think it's I don't know if it's for me, it's a gray area. I'll speak for myself. Real talkers, you can speak for yourselves. For some of you, it's black and white. It's a gray area for me. I think that wildlife sanctuaries have a place. I think that there is huge value.
Yeah, if they're being protected because in the wild, they're
like the cougar example near Canmore is a perfect example. These cubs are orphaned. The cubs are going to die on their own. Fish and Wildlife finds a place for them.
Or protecting extinct animals that are almost extinct. Do we all
agree that there's two things here also at play to further obfuscate this whole conversation. Number one, would it be way cooler for these animals to be wild and free than to be in captivity? Yes. Number two, will they have more food security, more safety, and die of natural causes most likely in a zoo? Yes. Nature is harsh. Nature is metal.
Sure.
The grizzlies and the cougars and the wolves and the snakes and everybody else at the zoo, the hippos, the giraffes. I mean, aside from the one, I'm not making fun of it. I'm not joking about it, except for the one that strangled itself. But, they're going to live longer lives than being chased down by a lion on the plains of the Serengeti, that giraffe. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, like the zoo life, it's a compromised life. No animal, did it have the ability to choose, I suspect would choose a zoo. Only the laziest animals would choose a zoo, and the laws of nature would determine typically that the laziest animals would be the first to die. But yeah, whether or not there's a role for zoos 50 years from now, I think that zoos are having to go, when I say on the offensive, that sounds a little bit too antagonistic, but zoos are having to be proactive in justifying their purpose and communicating to the public like they're doing at the Wilder Institute at the Calgary Zoo. They're not a sponsor. This is just how I feel about it. Otherwise, I think that public opinion could drastically change. It already has, Johnny, like you said, from the time that Marineland opened to now. So Canadians will grapple with this. Kenzie's also asking us, have we talked at all about this story of the she says the 400 ostriches called. I think it's about 300, but this is a BC. I mean, who cares? Potato, same deal. Hundreds of ostriches. The federal government plans to cull these ostriches over concern. Obviously, I think around disease, avian flu in particular, but the owners and supporters of this ostrich farm, I'm showing Global News coverage on this right now, are devastated, as you would be, financially and probably otherwise devastated by what this is going to happen, what this all means. Daryl Haar in our live chat says people, they have their head in the sand on this one. Nice one, Daryl. Nice pun. But it is a troubling story, and it's actually getting pretty wild right now. I don't know if you saw this, but there's been an alleged assault and arson implicating protesters, allegedly. RCMP say a suspect was arrested, released on a condition not to return to the property. They had a ton of police. They had it's not accurate to call it a riot squad. They did not have a riot squad, but they had dozens of law enforcement officers there to enforce a warrant. This is getting nasty. That's a tough one too. Alberta grappled with this through BSC. You remember this as well. Ralph Klein, shoot, shovel, and shut up, right? When avian flu, there were ostriches in that, what do you call it, a flock? There were ostriches on that farm that tested positive for avian flu and were euthanized. The owners of the farm and spokespersons for the operation say that the population has been disease-free for quite some time and that the animals should be able to survive. And the federal government sees it differently and says that avian flu, the impact of avian flu on the animal kingdom, humans included, is so huge that they can't take the risk, and the approximately 300 birds have to be euthanized. That's a tough story, man.
It's just,
Alberta Girl says that maritime sanctuary, you guys, another fantasy, says people should have seen this thing coming with Marineland.
I mean, we did. We knew that eventually the world, it's just changing, and or these animals get too old to perform or to even be, it doesn't seem right to have them in public. What happens then? That obviously they get euthanized, right? They don't, none of these, I don't think they die of a glorious old age. And, there's probably a point where they're used up, and it's just really sad.
Daryl says this is literally the Star Trek movie where they went and saved the whales. We need 4-inch clear aluminum. We'll be able to figure it out.
Oh, he's got a plan.
Tracy says when we know better, we do better. I think Tracy's referencing the evolution of folks thinking on animals in captivity. Kenzie says the polar bear in the Tokyo Zoo was a very sad creature. I think of our pal. I never met him personally. I didn't know him at all. But the beloved Canadian Gord Downie, I think of his tune, Gus, the polar bear from Central Park, the Tragically Hip song. That's a good one for people. If we play it right now, we'll get flagged for copyright infringement, but that's a good one for people to check out today.
I obviously grew up in Ontario. They were in a small town just outside Toronto, now called Durham Region, but it was called Bowmanville back then. One of the largest privately owned zoos in Canada at the time, definitely the largest in Ontario, perhaps North America, but just Google it, because it had a downfall the same way. I remember going there when I was 9 years old, and the bears, there was an orange soda pop machine next to their enclosure.
Oh, geez.
And people would buy orange pop and feed the bears orange pop. And now I look back and I'm I can't remember if I was involved, but I'm what was happening back then? The world has changed so much. I just feel the end payoff when you have to either reintroduce these animals back into the wild or the sad part, euthanize them. And like you said, the cost of keeping especially marine life, think of how hard it is to keep. Have you ever had a betta fish or something?
Yeah.
Not just a goldfish, a fish that needs intense care.
The Siamese fighting fish.
Yeah. They need their water clean. They need certain, pH levels. They need specific food. They get sick often. Then you have to take care of them and give them other food and stuff. And I just think what it would take to take care of a killer whale or marine life of anything.
Well, $2 million
for years, for decades.
$25 million a year. $25 million a year to keep 30 beluga whales.
And then transporting them somewhere else. And the impact that has on them and the cost, it just, why would you even start a venture like this and not look at the end game? Like, okay, yeah, let's start it. Here's the money in the middle. What do we do at the end of the life of these?
But they don't, but you're not thinking about the end at that point.
No.
You know, you're thinking of like, here's where public sentiment is now. Like, I mean, if you think about it, like people would just like back in the day, it was like, you know, people would go out, like, let's call them like wildlife bounty hunters, basically. Yeah. But you'd go out and like take animal, like starting with like the Barnum and Bailey and the circus and the whole, and like all the way through. And you look at how, and this is, by the way, after humans, we're the worst plague on the planet, by the way. We are. But if like, we used to go around and target the most endangered species. The most threatened animals on planet Earth were the most endangered ones because there's always assholes that want to kill the last one, the last white rhino or the last dodo bird or like they always want the last one. They want to like eradicate them from the planet. And so humans went, I'm not a history professor and there will be some holes in what I'm presenting here, but approximately, let's say 100 years ago, our thing was to go kill them all and then take them to a taxidermist and then show them off at like the World's Fair. Like, look at this great beast, this Russian bear, or this, like whatever you have it, right? Whatever bird, whatever snake, we kill it, we stuff it, and we show it off. Then we started capturing them and putting them in zoos, and we would capture the young ones, right? And we would sell them. And that was like primates and whales, and they're harvested, like stolen, taken from the wild and placed into captivity. And then it seemed like the public opinion changed. I'm just gauging based on my own awareness as a human. I think it was probably starting in like the 80s, 90s, when people started to push back on the idea of animals taken from the wild into captivity, but still supported the idea of animals born in captivity. In other words, they hadn't known anything different, right? So I can think of like Calgary, right around the time of the Olympic Games in '88, partnering with China to like bring in pandas. And then there was like a breeding initiative, and then they were trying to get, right? Or you'd hear of like zoos shipping a stud or a mare or whatever animal you're talking about, you know, a guy and a gal, John, getting them together in hopes that they could breed towards sustainability and preservation of species. And I do think, I'm not mocking that, I do think that there's a certain role for that, a very important role for that. But now you get to the point where you wonder, are humans past the idea of being okay with born in captivity, and now are we okay with the idea of being in captivity at all?
Yeah. And I don't want to bridge this to rodeo, because that's the last thing I want to do with our Alberta viewers and
especially with CFR kicking off.
But I mean, it's circuses right now. Like we do the animals in the circus, it's pretty much gone. Like people are like, this is wrong, right?
Yeah.
So like, what's a level up from that? It would probably be a zoo, right? Like, I mean, it's just wrong to bring an animal from Africa and bring it to North America. It just feels wrong. But also, you know, humans, we're dumb like this. We like you said, we hunt things till they're extinct or till they're almost extinct, and then they go extinct themselves because you're right. We can't get them in a room to mate. Like the most recent one, black rhinoceros, the western, like 2011, hunted for ivory, poached into extinction. Like an animal just went away. And I understand that happens naturally sometimes. You'll think back thousands of years to, the golden toad went away by itself. We didn't hunt it to extinction, but like these big, beautiful animals that, like you said, are the big show.
Yeah.
We destroy them.
How about this from
so
Tracy
sad.
D? Tracy in our live chat, powered by Park Power, says, I have a photo of myself riding a baby elephant at the old, is it called Al Oming's farm? I'm not sure. I wasn't here at the time. Al Oming's farm in Edmonton. Tracy says, I hate seeing it now. She says, but it's a sign of the times. 100%. Edmonton 2000, great handle, says a good subject to discuss would be how animals in zoos are being affected by the war in Ukraine. This is actually a wild story, and I'm glad that you brought it up. Check this out. So, I mean, there's zoos that have been abandoned for all intents and purposes for obvious reasons. People have had to flee. It's a war zone. But these animals are still in captivity. If you check out, it's called Ukraine War Environmental Consequences Work Group. You can see how Ukraine's zoos, and there are so many brave humans that are doing everything they can, putting their own lives at risk to try to save the lives of these animals in captivity at Ukraine's zoos. There's a feature that they published. Yulina Spinova is the journalist on that story called Safe Haven, how Ukraine zoos are saving animals in spite of war. Again, that's uwecworkgroup.info, or just Google Ukraine war environmental consequences. It's a pretty wild
story. I had
story.
no idea.
I didn't think that we were going to get to talking about zoos in Ukraine today after leading off with pipelines in Alberta, but this is why we have these conversations, and this is why we absolutely adore this audience. The conversation can continue on our Real Talk Discord if you're a member of our Patreon, if you support Real Talk on Patreon, or if you're a member, a Real VIP or a Real Deal member on our YouTube channel, you'll have that link to participate in the Real Talk community chat, and that's on Discord. That continues 24 hours a day. It's an awesome way to connect with the show. Details on our Edmonton mayoral debate in just a quick second. First, I want to make sure that Friesen Brothers is on your radar. If you're going to be hosting or even attending a Thanksgiving celebration this year, you have to check out the Thanksgiving dinner box at Friesen.com. It's a direct link. If you go to cateringbyfriesen.com, that's where you can order your Thanksgiving dinner box. This is crafted for your table. Spend more time with family and friends. Let Friesen Brothers handle Thanksgiving dinner. Serve perfectly roasted turkey. By the way, this is what our family does. I'm speaking firsthand. It's phenomenal. It's roasted. It's carved. Delicious sides like their roasted baby potatoes, those creamy dill carrots, which are, in my mind, the star of the show. They've got their Mother Dough Bread Company tray buns, gravy, cranberry sauce. You can add on Granny's stuffing, Ukrainian sausage, pierogi casseroles, sourdough cinnamon buns, hot apple crisp. Oh my gosh, handcrafted fruit or pumpkin pies. It's $79 plus tax and feeds for. Like, you tell me where you're going to find somewhere that you can go and spend $80 and feed 4 people the feast that I just laid out. It's impossible. Keep more money in your pocket. Order the Friesen Brothers Thanksgiving dinner box today. If you're hosting 40 people, just order 10 of them. You throw it in the oven, you heat it up, you serve it, you look like a genius. And you're not in the kitchen all day while everybody else is having laughs, enjoying that beautiful fall weather. Cateringbyfriesen.com to order your Thanksgiving dinner box. The team at Kubi also reminding you that their sustainability efforts continue, their installations continue into the fall. This is the busiest summer in Kubi history, which is absolutely fantastic. This company, what a success story over its first 10 years. But going solar has never been more doable, and they're making it easy. Between the Canada Greener Homes Loan, the Clean Energy Improvement Program, you can turn your roof or any space into something that saves you money long term. You can learn more or even request a free solar quote by going to their website. That's kubi.ca, Kuby.ca, Kubi Renewable Energy. And we end with a shout out to this beloved group at UCAN Youth Services. This is our charity of choice for 2025-26. UCAN Youth Services, a nonprofit charitable organization dedicated to helping young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. I've talked to you a lot about the employment partnerships they have. If you're in charge of hiring entry-level workers in your workforce, maybe it's hospitality, maybe it's retail, maybe it's construction. UCAN is graduating motivated, skilled, intelligent young adults 18 to 24 through their Road to Work and their Verdo programs, but they need somewhere to go after that. If you could use trained, skilled, motivated entry-level workers in your workforce, consider a partnership today. You can connect with the team at UCAN by visiting their website, ucan.ca. That game farm, that is Al Wemming? Al Oming? Am I saying it right, guys? A lot of people. Haas letting us know. Am I saying it right, guys? Al Oming was a co-founder of Stampede Wrestling. We referenced Stampede Wrestling just the other day in the context of the great Ed Whalen, who was a legend and a formative influence in me as a young person. Mm-hmm. Ed Whalen, you'll hear me say it once or twice a year on the show, a ring-a-ding-dong dandy. He was the inventor and the purveyor of that phrase. Mark says, the Al Omen Game Farm says, we all knew about it when I was a kid, says that Innisfail place, what's that called again? The Discovery Wildlife Park, says has animals from there. I know I'll make some enemies by saying this, but that Innisfail Wildlife Park is the most depressing place in Alberta, and I would encourage you to spend your tourism dollars elsewhere. As we wrap this episode of the show, after taking aim at a private business, but facts are facts, and that's the way I feel about it. It's a disgraceful setup out there. Let's end with a positive, and that is that Real Talk has another must-watch episode locked and loaded for you. Our next one, that's Friday the 3rd of October, as we welcome the top 3 polling candidates for the next mayor of Edmonton. That's Tim Cartmel, Andrew Knack, and Michael Walters around the Real Talk Roundtable for a mayoral debate. It starts at 8:30 sharp Mountain Time. Thank you in advance for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jespersen, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton, member emerita Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjespersen.com.